Well, hello everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Somehow all of my monitor stuff is turned off right now again. But that's okay. It is what it is. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to trust that you can hear me. And if you can't hear me, I certainly hope someone will be kind enough to uh, to let me know. Um, but right now, of course, I can't hear anything again. Oh, this bothers me to no end. But I'm not going to sweat it. So, anyway, hi, Malta Franzman. Can you please verify that you can hear me? That would be great. Um, can you hear me? Okay. Anyway, so somebody please verify. Okay, so what were we talking about? Today we're going to be talking about. First of all, before I begin, I would like to talk about how great. Thank you very much. Awesome. First of all, I'd like to point to my descriptions where there are links to the ways that I like to make money on things. Do please check that out because I am doing all this stuff so that I can continue to I don't know, profit off of it, I guess, not just for profit's sake, but just so I can sort of put that into the next steps of what I want to build with what I'm envisioning with my expression of this aspect of existence that I'm working on here. This whole Zeus cult thing that I'm presenting to the world is not just for shits and giggles. It's because I really do think it's going to save the world, and not everybody's world, but those people who apply it to their lives. Who are drawn to this kind of thing are going to find that it's very useful to establish themselves in such a way that they can enjoy their experiences here on Earth a little bit more. I don't pretend it's for everybody. Sorry, I'm a little bit cotton mouth today, but it's not for everybody. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's fine. It's okay. But I think it is very useful for those of us who are into this kind of thing. And I am planning on building more resources for us as we go forward. Moving forward, we're going to have like a place to hang out, a place where we can go and relax a little bit, formal gatherings where we can exchange war stories and provide initiatory support for one another and generate some kind of joint group kind of focus, energetic stuff that we can apply to our lives. Also, some healing stuff where we go through and do some cleansing and whatnot over time. But all the stuff that comes out of like this podcast, I'm going to be making money on. Also, my site, all that stuff is going into the pot that eventually becomes what I envision to be like a group center of support for those who are doing the work and supporting one another. Anyway, so yes, I am super into this being a mystery cult that actually produces adepts and initiates who are capable of changing the world around them in ways that benefit themselves and the people they love the most. Because it's a hell of a world right now. The life is hard, and magic will help. So that's what the money's all about. Do please donate generously because I love money. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the practices, not just the practices. Sorry, I'm looking at the end of my notes here because I was just stating them right up until the very last second. Today we're going to be looking at the occult, the hidden meaning of why we're here, what our purpose is on the face of the earth, what our cosmologies teach us about our role on planet Earth. A lot of people have spent a lot of time talking about why we're here as human beings, what the purpose of life on Earth is, what it's all about to exist here, why are we here? Philosophy is all about trying to figure out the why of existence because it looks like God created everything and disappeared, or we just came into being and emerged into this consciousness and eventually will fade away. And maybe that's how it's been created. I don't know. That's where I tend to lean, if you can't tell. But where do we come from according to our core beliefs is going to be a very key part of how, as magicians, we perform the conjuration practices, the meditations, the visualizations, the lore that we work with on a daily basis that empower us to make changes in the world. That's going to reflect where we see ourselves in relationship to the rest of the invisible world that we work with to create our existence, right? So if you don't know where you're at and why you're here, like think of it as like a corporation. Like think of your experience as a corporation. You've got a PR group, you've got your business group, you've got your the bean counters, you've got the CEOs, you've got different branches and divisions doing different things. I forgot where I was going with all that. I'm sorry, but like every part of it comes together to present an overall whole, right? Um, each department, each part is defined in its movements by what it's in charge of and what its overall goal is as a department, and it relates to the overall corporation, the whole, through its relationships to the other departments, right? So the business group is defined by their relationship to finance and blah blah and blah blah and blah blah, but finance is defined by their relationships to blah blah and blah blah and blah blah, right? So each group has their own definition and their context as they relate to other departments that is important to those other departments, but it's not the same relationship for each individual part, right? But you know what part it is by looking at the whole, because the whole has a better, you can't really understand why people are counting beans if you don't understand that the beans have to pay for production, right? It's like you got to understand where your role in this whole process of manifestation is for you to understand why it is that when we conjure these spirits, they're going to show up. Your creation mythology is going to give you an explanation for why it is that a magician can conjure a spirit and have the spirit show up and say, yes, I will obey you, right? Solomon was given the ability to conjure the demons to put them to work in the temple because of his holiness, right? Or whatever the initiatory thing was that empowered him, right? It was God's blessing, God's personal empowerment of Solomon, if I remember right. But his knowledge of the seals and his knowledge of the magic of Solomon is what allowed him to bind those spirits, right? And bless the wisdom of God. Yeah, so that is where his power came from. His wisdom, the great wisdom of Solomon that he received as a blessing from God that was then codified and passed on through Solomonic traditions, right? That's the holy aspect of that. Enochian magic, the power of the magician comes from knowing no, Joseph, I don't think you do have to conjure all 72 Solomonic demons with initiations. I think that they're just there to pick the ones that you need to on the way. But I got to stop doing that. I got to take breaks and answer questions as we go because I'm a little harebrained. So anyway, I do have some notes to kind of try to keep me on track. But where was I? I was talking about Solomonic magic, right? Sources of power, right? And your cosmology. So Solomonic is from that gift of God. Pagans, when they make conjurations, it's a priest knows the secrets of their god's offerings and the timings of the god and their sources, and they know their secret names and codes. And a lot of the different mystical traditions of why spirits come to you boils down to knowing their names and their seals. But one of the things that like Jake Stratton Kent made magnified within the Goetic community was that there's a pact involved. There's pact magic is another source of power in magic. You get your power from an agreement, a contract that you make with this demon, and the demon says, I will serve you because you've made this contract with me, right? And what you're putting on the line, according to Christianity, is your soul. But that's not necessarily true. It's up to you to kind of sort of come to your own understanding of what it is that is your agreement on that contract. It can be something like, I will make you an offering of smoke and fire in return for your services, and I will honor your name in my community, right? That is a viable sorry, I just saw Joseph's return comment. Yes, I agree. Thank God. It takes freaking forever. But it's not, anyway, sources of power, right? So sources of power are key to understanding why you have this authority over the spirits, and what your relationship to the spirits are. And all that comes from your lore, your story, your backstory, right? What's your backstory, magician? How did you become a magician? What magical thing happened to you? BJ Swain, good friend of mine, who oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I meant to change this picture. It's not all about the money. All right. There we go. Okay, so anyway, cosmologies, right? Cosmologies are what explain where you end up falling into the whole framework of everything else in the universe. Okay, so like in the divine Pymander, we're going to go through that later, but it explains how the human being came into being, and what it's a reflection of, and why it came to the earth, and why we have the powers that we have to create things, and what our purpose is, and why people forget what our purpose is, and how to return to our place in glory, right, as it were. And then if you look at the Dervani manuscript that I'm super into lately, it's great. Jesse, you're not wrong. But the Dervani manuscript that I'm into talks about how Zeus recreates the entire universe out in his own image, and then manifests himself into it, and manifests as ourselves, right? And it talks about how there's the source of everything is still Zeus the head, the source, the root of all, that is talked about in the Orphic hymn to Zeus, Saturnian king, root of all that stuff. And then that Saturnian king, that root of all, that Zeus the head of everything, it comes into being after that. It's the middle, right? The middle is the manifestors, that realm of conscious entity that maintains the process of turning those ideas into the material experience of those ideas, right? And then there's the everything else, right? The all in all, the actual stage upon which the idea from the mind is projected through the middle layer of spirit and consciousness and awareness and matter, and the whole cosmic natural law thing, that lens through which the spiritual world is projected into this material world, is that middle phase. And that's every invisible being, that's every archangel, that's every jinn, that's every ancestor spirit, that's every one of us, including those in the body, right? Because we're still connected to that middle. And when we think our thoughts, we're thinking from the invisible realm. Until we speak them out loud, they don't exist. They're just electricity and chemicals. That's not real. You can't read. I mean, actually, we can probably read people's brains pretty soon. But the thing is that those chemicals and reactions and things are coming after we think about, or actually, that's not. If you anyway, the source of our thoughts. The more I think about it, the more I understand. Anyway, it's there's actually, they do understand how thoughts are happening, like a little bit later than we're aware of them coming into being. So, and you can chemically monitor that your thoughts come into being before you are aware consciously that you're thinking them. And this is something that they've known about for it's not new. It's like at least 70 years worth of research has shown this. But consciousness itself is happening before we even know it, right? And that's where fate comes into play. There's biological indications that everything is predetermined. There's everything in physics points to the fact that there can be no such thing as free will, and yet we operate in ignorance of the outcome of our actions. So we experience things as if it were the result of our choices, right? So anyway, I think that that invisible realm, that Zeus the middle, is that lens through which we project that idea, that fate that science insists must be true, is projected through our actions and our choices that are made in ignorance of the outcome. And we experience it as if it were, linear and progressive from our choices. And everything seems to operate as if that were true, right? As if our magical intentions, our desires and our wants, when we speak them into being and call upon these other spirits of the middle layer by their names and seals, we call them into being, and they are sent to create what we speak into being. This is the will of God being made manifest on the earth, right? According to that particular thing, right? That's that process of presenting our existence, presenting our demands to existence, or our our direction to the forces of existence. It's how we bring that into being, that eyeball projecting that light into this world. And then it's those of us of that middle realm who have bodies that then process that experience once it's projected out here, right? And when we get to bring it back in. That's my understanding of this whole experience of things. In my cosmology, I have a right to interact with these middle layer of beings because I'm one of them, you know, and because I'm an incarnate human who is drawn to magic, I know that I'm a magician, right? And because I believe in fate, I know I was fated to be a magician. So according to BJ, I have witch blood, right? According to his criteria for who has witch blood and who doesn't. People who think they do pretty much probably do, because who would think they would want it if they weren't already a part of this? You know, who would want to be a part of this if they weren't part of it? It's not something you can talk about. I mean, nowadays I can talk about it at work because people talk about who they vote for, and everybody votes for a moron, you know. And it's like, okay, there's really not much pride left to us as a species. So I don't worry too much about talking about it these days. But I mean, it's not really like something people take seriously or respect you for in the modern workplace. You know, I I think that the respect we get in the occult community is also something that's rather a joke. It's not as important at all as what people think it is. It's not valuable. You know, it really has no value. The only value there is in anybody being popular or having any esteem from anybody else is if they're using it to create a better experience for themselves and others, in my opinion, right? I think that we should be working on making a good life for ourselves so we can make a better life for our friends and our family. In as many ways as we can. And I try to do that as many times as I can. I fail more often than I succeed, but I'm always experimenting on it, you know, and I'm always encouraging other people to do the same. I think that's part of my cosmological viewpoint on existence. That's part of my reason for being here. I think that this universe has fallen to crap. I think there's a lot of problems in the background, but I also know that in Hindu teachings, some Hindu tantric teachings, they talk about the Kali Yuga and how for the last couple thousand years and for the next few thousand years or something like that, we're going through the end of the world. It's a phase shift. We're not going to have a good time. Most of this time is painful. But what the Bodhisattvas job during the Kali Yuga is, in my opinion, again, this is my interpretation of things, it could be completely wrong, but the Bodhisattvas are the folks that come into being and try to make it possible for throughout this terrible time for the human incarnates to have a good time, find a little bit of happiness and pleasure and enjoyment of their experience of this time, even though in the background everything is going to crap. And if you remember back to like the early 80s, like I do, my whole life has been one traumatic experience after another. I have never lived without living in fear of my life, right? The Kali Yuga it's a Hindu belief, and I'm going to probably butcher the actual thing. Probably better to research it yourself. But my understanding of it, at least, is that there are different cycles of existence. The supreme consciousness is basically sleeping, and as we progress through his dreams, the existence goes through these cycles. And there's like a creative cycle, a bounteous cycle, a fully fruited cycle, and then everything starts to fall to shit cycle, and then it all starts over again. And we're in the chaos phase. If you look at Discordianism, which I am much more familiar with, the 5 seasons are chaos, discord, something bureaucracy, and aftermath, right? And it's just basically the cycles of civilization are basically reflected in this cosmological order or something like that. So anyway, it's the Kali Yuga is basically the destructive time. It's when Kali is destroying everything to return it back to the source. That's my understanding of it, and it could be a terrible understanding of it, and I confess to being ignorant of the true nuances of such things, but such is the way of things. I may have to take a break here because my dog is pacing, and I tend to trust her if she wants to go outside. Yeah. So hang on just a second. I'll be right back. Hey, come on, sweetie. Oh. That's what I get for trusting dogs. As soon as I went to let her out, she sat back down. We'll see. I might have to get up again. Anyway, it is what it is. Silly puppy. Why don't you go back? Yeah, you're going to lay down. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to have to let her out. I'm sorry. Here, sweetie. Let's go. Hey, hon. Hey. 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 Toot, 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 toot. Whoopsie. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. I'm not sure. Anyway, okay, a little bit of live drama here. Yes. By the way, everybody, my dog got back. She's a lovely pupper, and she's a wonderful dog. And she ran away. And I asked the community to do magic for me, and they totally did. And we found her. And one person predicted like where she would be found, and it was pretty accurate. It was really nice to see that kind of thing happen. And everybody else, their tips and their encouragement and their appeals to the deities, all that definitely manifested in great ways. So I was very happy to receive that support and to participate in our community in that. My lovely wife, Nicole. She's just getting the dog, I swear.
Horrible. Selfie's fine. Come on, let's go.
All right. Cool. Okay. So, yes. All right. Sorry about that. But she was, I don't want her to crap on the floor. Her excretions can be plentiful and, what's the word for really smells bad? It really smells bad. Anyway, yes. Hey, Alexander, how's it going? Nice to see you. So yeah, everybody, thank you so much again for helping me with my dog. I am so pleased to get that kind of support and to be a part of such a great community. It made me feel great, and I'm happy to reciprocate whenever anybody needs it. Can't thank you all enough. It was really cool, and it's great to have her back. It's really great to have her back too. Nicole did a sound bath on her today, and did a balancing of her little paw chakras and everything. It was really neat. So she's sitting there like totally zoned out and blissed out, like you would like. And she sat there for like half an hour afterwards, just totally enjoying her doggy consciousness for a moment. Anyway, getting back to where we were previously, I was talking about how as magicians we have to rely on our Lord to inform us to understand what our purpose is here on Earth, right? And in different systems, you can tell by why you're allowed to make these pacts, sort of where you end up in relation to everything else. So. Let's see, how did I put it here? What are your sources reason for humans that explain why you as oh yeah. So like well, one way to think about this is what for your basic cosmology, what is it about that personal cosmology that explains why you as a witch or a pagan or a magician, Karcist, why are there spirits? Why do they exist within that belief system at all in the first place? What is the role of these spirits in the natural role of things, in the natural realm of things? Why do they come when a magician calls them? why do they show up, and why do they help a magician? What's their obligation to a magician? What's their motivation? What's their reward? Do they have to? There's different reasons for these things to explain it to yourself and to justify you having the audacity to dare to conjure these forces, right? Something has to explain that. So, like, why are you able to do that? Understanding that about yourself is sort of key to feeling confident in your circle. One of the things that Zeus had to gain before he could overthrow Kronos was metis. He had to have the lessons of metis ingrained into him. He had to learn how to create the potions that put Kronos to sleep. He had to learn how to create the potions that made him vomit forth all the other gods, so that he had allies to work with. He had to have that cunning, he had to have that schmoozerality to be able to woo his way into the courtroom of Kronos in the first place, to be able to get the position and the trust to be able to poison him. Right? He worked his way into that. He invented drinking games, according to one of the sources I read a long time ago, and so that he could trick him into drinking this potion. He like challenged them to drink as much as he did, and they tried, and sure enough, landed them in trouble. So just goes to show, Dionysian ways were always at work in Zeus's operations. Anyway, that whole gaining of metis, that gaining of wisdom and insight and everything, that's something Zeus had to do, right? And that's kind of forgot where that was coming from, but basically, how does and okay, so the next thing you got to look at is, how does that ability to conjure these spirits, how does that fulfill the system that you believe in, right? So why does that system have a witch, right? Why does the world have witches? Why does nature work with? Why does Selene give her power to the Thessalonian witches? Why are they able to call her down? Why? What is that fulfilling? What need in existence is met by that process, right? Why do things happen? Does everything happen for a reason? Probably not, probably not. But it's a convenient way to understand what it is about you that makes your desires worth having in this material world, right? If you understand that Selene is working with the witches in support of them to give them her power to manifest this world in the ways that are described in the Greek magical papyri, right? And by the way, Panaphlos. I can't say his name right, but our Greek friend has released a new translation of the hymn to the spell to the moon for all purposes. So it's really great, from the Greek magical papyri. I've used it a number of times already. It is super effective and a lot of fun to say. You can feel Selene descend into the room when you start the prayer. It's really beautiful. Very good. I recommend it. I will have to find some links at some point. Let's see. Anyway, so once you understand sort of where these different things are explain why you should be able to conjure these spirits, and why spirits are supposed to be conjured in the first place, it kind of gives you a sense of what your personal role is going to be in the rest of your life, right? Oh, good question, Zone Dweebies. All right, that one's I'm going to get back to. Yes. So I want to talk real quick, though, just so you can kind of grasp the concept. In different systems, like Christianity says that you're here to worship God, right? That's the purpose of human beings. In the Greek myths, you were also created to worship gods, according to the Hesiod, right? The original creation of humans was to worship gods. There's several other interpretations of why gods created humans in the different Greek creation myths, but that's the primary one, I guess. I don't know. It's one of the ones. Egyptian beliefs taught that you were created to obtain Heh, or H-E-H is how it's spelled, eternity, a stage of everlasting bliss, right? I don't know exactly what nirvana is, but it's like everlasting bliss. Maybe it's everlasting, not as like a return to what I imagined the all thing was like before it emanated as everything else. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, Alexander. Yeah, it was Brian. can't remember his last name, but he's the one that's been creating the interlinear translations of the Greek magical papyri. Does that ring a bell? Anyway, Brian Fanislaus, Fanilos, I am going to go crazy unless I don't figure this out now. This is just absurd. Phenolis isopsephia. Phenolis isopsephia. Phenolis isopsephia is who I'm talking about. Yes. Okay. So Phenolis isopsephia has been doing translations of the Greek magical papyri. Yeah, I think you would totally do, Alexander. You'll totally find it in no time at all. But he did like he had like a Kickstarter for his work, and he's got a Patreon where he's been releasing like the Orphic hymns that correspond to the planets. I've already incorporated all of those into my regular practice. I really like his style. It definitely appeals to my interpretation of things. It's very literal, and there's some poetic license taken, but only enough to make it really good, in my opinion. So I like that. But anyway, your lore is very important, and I'm getting pretty picky and finicky with my lore these days, as you can tell. But also, I look for the lore that that, like an echo chamber, that confirms the things that I need to understand, that I need to hear to be able to do the things that I am doing to manifest this light of the universe out into the rest of the world, right? Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Sharif. There it is. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's it. That Sharif just shared the link on Facebook. So on that side of where we're broadcasting from. So anyway, yes, your lore feeds the methods and the methodology that you use to project that invisible light of the all thing through yourself into your experiences and your experienced reality. Right. So that's why it's important to understand your lore and really understand where your role is in everything. And it gets rid of the whole cognitive dissonance thing when you have a clear understanding of what you're supposed to be doing and that your spirits are there to help you with that. Right. You don't end up screwing up all the time if you're actually working on what you're here to be doing, right? And a lot of what we're here to be doing is having a good time. And if you focus on having a good time, you find that your brain is in a better state. You're happier, and you aren't pursuing self-gratification all the time because you're already happy. You're able to share that happiness with other people. You're able to project that happiness into their lives because you already got yours. You're not still striving for it, and it's when you take care of yourself first, you're able to take care of other people later. And it has to be compassionate for it not to be some kind of a-hole belief system. And I think that I believe the only people who get the kind of power to change things effectively are the kind of people who also maintain a little bit of humility. But that's not entirely true. I know it's not true. I know too many egotists who have too much power for that to be true. So life isn't fair, but I try to be a decent person anyway. If it doesn't matter whether there's good or evil, if you can do either one in any choice, it's really a reflection of your character, what you do, right? And I'm just going to try to do good with the rest of the time I have left because I prefer to. It's just my standards, and I'm not going to judge anybody else by them. But I got stuff I need to do. So anyway. All right, so lore and all of that. I wanted to talk a little bit about how the Corpus Hermetic have shaped my personal understanding of why the spirits work with me. I have a quote here from the Divine Pymander, verses 12 through 15, it looks like. It's where it talks about the creation of the first human soul in the image of the Creator. That was co-equal to the mind, right? So even in the Divine Pymander, when that was being written I guess that was like 3rd century. I should probably start with the Derveni manuscript. It was written like 700 years before. But the Corpus Hermeticum is what I read first, and it shaped my understanding of us as being made in the image of the mind, the nous mind, and that ability to create the universe that Nuos mind had executed, that facility to create, was co-equally created within the human being. And understanding that as the approach to all of my Hermetic philosophy afterwards, it really shifted the way I see everything, and has led me to this understanding of the all thing as what it is. And the Dervani manuscript, finding out that 700 years prior, the mystery traditions were already teaching that Zeus was all in all, and that there was a single source of everything, that was being manifested, and also that the way to find happiness and pleasure was to pursue that source, and just to like sing hymns to it, and have a good time with it, and be pleasant with it and be pleasant in expressing it to others. That's actually how you get to be happy, is by pursuing this happiness. I know it sounds absolutely incredible that when you pursue happiness, sometimes you find it. But anyway, it's more complicated than that, and I'm oversimplifying again the way I usually do. But it's important to, I think it's important to realize that this idea of illuminism, like this idea that the eye in the pyramid is projecting this invisible light into the material world to create it, that's something that goes back, it's 450 BCE. We have this manuscript from the Dervani papyrus explaining how this all in all manifests through these gods and these spirits and the material world to execute its idea of how reality should be, right? And in our day-to-day experience, we have to suffer with this monstrosity of existence, right? There's a side of life that is horrifying to some aspect of ourselves, right? Some part of ourselves looks around at how we've treated the earth, how we treat each other, how animals treat one another in some cases, right? When we see an animal kill another animal, sometimes we're horrified by that, When we see ourselves hurt one another, we're horrified by that. We see what's going on in the Middle East right now. It's awful. It's heartrending, and it makes you disgusted with the people who support it, either side. It makes you disgusted with anybody who could support atrocity of any kind. You look at what's going on in Russia, you look at what's going on with our elections in our own country here in the United States. It's terrible. It's terrifying, right? It's horrible. Our existence has a horrifying aspect to it. It always has. If you look at the writings of every century, every generation of human beings where we have writings from, there were horrors and calamities to deal with over and over and over again. And then there were prosperous times of joy and peace and abundance, right? It goes both ways, right? Sometimes there's good things and sometimes there's bad things. And at the same time, the same world has shit and joy side by side, commingled most of the time. I am the best person I know, but I'm also the most evil person I know. I accept that about myself, and I try to do good. But when I do bad, I know it's because that's my nature, and I don't do that. And I've learned to turn my nature to good, but it is just as much my nature to be striving towards the head of a dictatorship as it is to be striving towards a community of like-minded peers who can work together to create a positive change, right? I can go whichever way I want. Yeah, I'm the decider. I'm the one that decides what I'm going to do, right? I decide whether I'm going to be good or bad, but I can do whatever I want. Who's going to stop me? Someone's going to stop me even if I choose to do the good thing, because there's going to be somebody selfish who doesn't want me to do that. Why? I don't know. There's always a conflict. That's part of life. I hate it. It sucks. But what are we going to do? It's just part of existence, right? And we know it's part of existence, and we know that we're here to conjure spirits because we're called to it, and they come when we call. Otherwise, why would they come if we weren't supposed to do it? So, I mean, we have these conflicts, we have these spirits, we have these abilities to call on them for whatever reasons our Lord teaches us that we have. So, what's our jobs in life? In occult traditions, what does the occult tradition that you follow say your job in life is as a human being alive and in the flesh? In my opinion, whether you call yourself a witch or a magician or a whatever your justification is for calling yourself that, your job is to do magic, to call your invisible friends, to change the world, to make it give you what you want, because it's your job to reflect your ideas through your personality, your actions, your words, and your spiritual activities. You're supposed to project that crap into these experiences that we're sharing with everybody else. That's all we can prove. We can't even prove that. It's all we can reasonably conclude about all this stuff. In my opinion, based on what I've seen, everything leads me to this as the only rational explanation, is that the reason that we can conjure spirits is because we're supposed to. And the reason we're supposed to is because that's how the universe is created. And that goes back to the Emerald Tablet, right? You know, the mystery of the one thing to ascend to the heavens through and return in power. Thus was the universe created. That's what it is, man. You know, I don't know. That's my opinion about what our occult purpose for being here is. I have reached my conclusions after a lot of practice and whatnot. So I don't think my conclusions are everybody's conclusions. I think that everybody's going to come to their own place with all this stuff, and that's cool. It's fine. It is what it is. You know, I really just want to see people accessing their sources of power and finding a way to make the world palatable, you know, because, hey, Agatha, how's it going? Because everybody is very exposed to all this negative crap, right? And a lot of people are getting really toxic on social media, myself included, on occasion, you know. It's not a great time for things, and there's a lot of negativity. But when I go after having something happy in my life, you know, the dog, having a companion, you know, going hiking with my wife, you know, going shooting with my wife, you know, doing a lot of things with my wife, but you know, pursuing my career goals, you know, I'm learning to fly a drone because I think there's a business to be made in there. I've got my wood lathe technology stuff. I've got my laser engraving business, which I'm behind on. I've got a lot of things going on, you know, and it's to keep this expression of light that I have in mind coming into this universe to create these experiences that I want to experience. And what I found is that the more I want to do, the more opportunities I have to do those things, and the more empowerment I have to make things manifest as a result of my magical practices. And they resulted in me understanding what to expect next when I do X, Y, and Z. So I'm trying to share that with everybody else because life is terrible. It's really hard. And when I have a good time, I'm nicer to everyone else. And when I'm nicer to everyone else, it makes the world a little bit better for everyone else. So I would like to see more people do that. So that's where I'm going with all this stuff. I hope that today was entertaining. Whoa, it's the 4th of July almost, so we got some fireworks. I hope that was entertaining. I wanted to recommend some meditational stuff here. Let's see. Okay. Breathe in. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Okay. So like, there we go. There are some meditational things I wanted to recommend for people. So like, okay, so first of all, in the beginning, right? So think about your creation myth from your personal belief system, right? And imagine that whoever that first human being was that was first created by the gods or a god or the mind or whatever that first human being was, in your visualization, picture that first human being being you, right? and like really kind of put your whole conscious awareness into this. And this is something I've done a few times with different belief systems. But the idea came from the Buddhist or I learned it from Crowley, the Tibetan tantric, whatever, wherever Crowley stole it from. The practice of imagining yourself dead, dying, and then decaying until you're just bones, and the bones scattering, and then becoming dust until you're part of the universe, right? And then growing again, something new if you're into that. But that whole death and decay of the self as a contemplation to overcome egoism, right? So I thought that was really great, but why not use it for everything else too? So I visualized myself at the beginning of the creation mythos, going through the processes of life and creation instead of just the processes of death and decay. So it's not just death and decay. You can take that on to whatever belief system you're working on in the afterlife. So like I've done visualizations for the end of my life where it was like the death of the body and the decay, but also the spirit before the throne of God and the judgment and the whole Christian white throne judgment thing. I've walked myself through a few true variations of that one a couple times, and then the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I've walked myself through that a couple times, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Different ideas about what happens when you go. I really like the one I've sort of settled on. is sort of from the way I've heard it best encapsulated was the Midnight Hour on Netflix, the description of the return of consciousness into consciousness. It's the most close representation of what I think happens when we die, based on my experiences with mushrooms and with the Derveni manuscript, not combined. I think the Derveni manuscript describes how consciousness emanates from Zeus into existence, and I think that reflects what you find out when you take mushrooms. And there could be a coincidence, or it could just be the Derveni manuscript is based on Orphic mysteries that involved mushrooms. That's also fine. It's based on more real things than some other belief systems. All right, so that's the in the beginning thing, so when you look at your lore, another thing to look at, this is part of the whole, let me go back to something else here. Know thyself. So this is the Agrippa quote, know thyself. We get the idea of whosoever therefore shall know themselves shall know all things in themselves, right? Especially they shall know God according to whose image they were made. So knowing yourself is sort of our commandment in the great work, is how we do the great work, how we finish the great work, how we accomplish the great work, is learning about ourselves and seeing through our self-understanding how our relationship and our understanding of the universe changes and vice versa, right? So it's by examining the macrocosm that we understand the microcosm. By examining the microcosm, we understand the macrocosm, right? So this is the core Hermetic philosophy of Cornelius Agrippa as he understood it, and the way I kind of understand it too, right? So how does this understanding of so how does your lore reflect itself in your day-to-day life, right? So like if you believe you're a pagan or a witch, does your house have pictures of black cats and pumpkins or anything spooky like that? I know it might sound silly to some people, but not to me, because I have little pumpkins and black cats around to remind me of the spooky season, because it's a spiritual season where the veil is. I know it's not really thinner than it is any other time, but it's a liminal season, right? It's a liminal state, and being in a liminal season, having things that remind me of that around the house reminds me that in this house, it's always a liminal state. This is a magical place where there's occult things going on. We're calling on Hecate, we're calling on Zeus, we're calling on the entire Greek pantheon at different times of the month, and it's a pretty happening byway of the spiritual activities, right? Having little reminders of that around it is sort of important. My wife is a witch. We happen to have a broom over the door. Is that a coincidence? How about that? I mean, in your daily life, you should see things in your decor and stuff that reflect your actual beliefs. If you don't have anything from your spiritual lore that informs your decision reflected in your life around you, I mean, maybe actually you do, and you haven't realized it, and it's just your spiritual beliefs aren't exactly what you think they are, right? So this is sort of the key thing I'm kind of getting at here. We need to understand what we really think about why we're here to have a purpose, right? Why do we believe we are even magicians? You don't know what you're here to do if you don't know what your system that you're working with says you're here to do. You know what I mean? You don't have a right to use the system if you're not meeting that fulfillment of that obligation that you have to that framework. In the Corpus Hermeticum, it says, I was made co-equal to the creator of the universe. In the Derveni manuscript, it says that the emergence of consciousness is necessary for the experience of existence, right? My magical reason to be able to speak things into being is because that's what we're here to do, right? I'm fulfilling my part of the bargain. I have to do this. I got to, mister. I got to. I don't have a choice. That's all of us, I think. Everybody who's drawn to this stuff, and most of our initiatory stuff that we go through is really just getting to a point where we accept it. Where we accept our power and our responsibility and our authority and the consequences of our actions, and the foresight to use our divination and our experience to inform our practice, and the maturity to be responsible with the power that we get. That's the whole process here, is understanding that we already have what the core text, the lore, says we have. Getting from, I don't even know what the lore says I'm supposed to do, to not only do I know what it says, but I understand how it applies to my daily life. So it's not just the decor, it's your practice, it's your outlook, it's your self-view. How is your cosmology reflected in your self-talk, in your head, in your psychology? I know it drives some magicians nuts that I bring up the word psychology in relation to magic, but if you don't think your mind and the study of your mind has any impact to your magic, I gotta wonder about you. I mean, if you think that, do you think that, because do you reject modern study of the heart in favor of 15th century study of the heart? Why would you reject modern study of the mind over 15th century of the mind? It doesn't make any sense. You're not going to go to the doctor and be like, only use techniques that were developed before 1900. That's ridiculous. We aren't stupid. Psychology is part of existence. It's part of our daily life. Gravity is too. Dogs are real. Psychology is a study of the mind. It exists. There's people write about it. You can read it. It's not fake. Okay. Magic is also real in the world. It's just like psychology. It's real. There's not a competition. One isn't more real than the other. It's different ways to study how we're here and what we do. It gives us different tools and techniques that apply to different contexts. I can drive a car. My magic doesn't change the fact that I can drive a car. I can study driving cars. I can study turning wood on a lathe and still do magic. I can have an understanding of psychology and also be a magician. It's okay, Anyway, it's not. Well, yeah, Kai Gong, everything has a little bit that's all shit. Most of what magicians from the 16th century believed was shit. Agrippa says that leopards' spots change their place and that lions are afraid of chickens. We don't live then anymore. We're not stupid. Okay? And yeah, a lot of modern psychology is shit. We're not stupid. AI is generating a lot of stupid shit. You better not be stupid. We can't pretend we're stupid. We're smarter than this. Accept our fucking intelligence here. Quit insulting us as a human being. You know, AI is not going to fucking overcome the intelligent human being who could fucking figure out how magic works, for fuck's sake. You know, we know how to differentiate. We can tell, you know, the difference between the gallery of magic stuff that is effective for some people, but not for others, versus the stuff that everybody puts to use and everybody gets a result from. We know what the difference is. We can see it. We're not stupid. Fuck's sake. Anyway, I don't remember what got me off on that. The other practices I wanted to talk about were just sort of like seeing yourself in relation to the other spirits of your world. So, like in the Corpus Hermeticum, it talks about the human being descending through the seven spheres and being a part of the seven governors of the planets and the planetary energies, right? And being, you know, part of them and being receiving their gifts and parts of their powers of creation. And I like to do a visualization where I ascend through the seven spheres and stand among them all, and they come out and be around me, and that's cool. It's fun. Anyway, I would like to recommend that to everybody else. Okay, so let's see. Where were we? I'm going back through the comments here. All right. Last time I looked at them. All right. Agatha says her magical practice has made her less anxious. Yes, mine too. Absolutely. You know, because like I'm not so afraid of what's going to happen because I've been through it so many times already. And magic has given me all the power that I need to recreate my life. I've had to do it a couple times because I make poor choices. It doesn't make me super wise. It just makes me super capable of doing super dumb things, you know, more so than other, or differently than other people anyway, not more so per se. But anyway, magic is great, but it doesn't make you smart for sure. Let's see, does having a printed version of the Trithemian Table of Practice or a Laman no different from hand drawing it? Does using a compass for the circle still count as hand drawn? In my opinion, the drawing of things by hand is taking your invisible world and making a mark in the physical world, right? That's important. That's symbolic, and that means a lot. If you can connect to something you've printed as much as you can to something you've drawn, great. I can't. I connect a lot better by at least tracing over it by hand. A lot of people are like, but I can't draw a perfect circle. And I'm like, yeah, no, you can't. It's okay. You know, if you look at the grimoires, they couldn't draw perfect circles either, and they got away with what they did anyway. You know, and they were hand copied by women whose husbands abandoned them in 16th century London. They had to freaking support themselves, so they would hand copy these books and then get tried as witches. And there was one lady like got out of being arrested because she said, "I can't read. I'm a woman." And they were like, "Oh yeah, women can't read. She must not be the owner of these books. She must just be copying them." So they didn't kill her. But you know, I mean, hand copying these grimoires was something that was done by poor illiterate people. They couldn't draw circles. You know, it wasn't accurate. It wasn't 100% perfect every time because it wasn't done on a printing press. So yeah. Anyway, it doesn't have to be perfect is my point. It's never been perfect for thousands of years. I can engrave a perfect circle or a near perfect circle with my laser out there, and it's just light and metal, and it should be like super awesome, but it's not going to be any more or less effective than one that is drawn by hand. And if that's like when I put it in a wooden box and I put all that effort into it, and when you work with that regularly, you're going to have a connection to it. But yeah, anyway, I hope that answers your question. Hand drawing and printing the table of practice are different, but I've used both to great effect for both years. Yes, Kaigong, you're exactly right. That's 100%, 100% absolutely effective. It's the magician that does the magic. It's the magician that does the magic, in my opinion. Yes, of course, you can use a compass and ruler. You don't have to freehand it. Yep, exactly. Every day is Halloween. Yes. Halloween decorations. Yes, breathe deeply and be centered as it's all drawn out. Yep. Main thing is to practice magic. Absolutely. I don't want to talk about that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. SSRIs are stupid. I agree. Well, I mean, it depends on what what you remember from the actual releases of the SSRI studies back in the 90s. So when the internet was new and fresh, we could just Google it and find the actual studies that the FDA had approved SSRIs with, and the results were 100%. I'm not lying at all. The SSRIs results were less effective than placebos, and yet they were passed because the government said having the FDA stamp of approval would give it more power as a treatment than the placebos would. It was basically hypnosis. They were like, if you prescribe this, they'll believe it more. And they'll make it even more effective. And that's why you should do it. And we'll make a lot of money. And they're like, oh, yeah, we should do that. So anyway, you used to be able to read that in black and white. It was right there. And you could get the PDFs and look it up back in the day. But it didn't take long for corporations to be able to hide that crap. And now you get in trouble if you talk about it. So that's just how that goes. Let's see, is a salt circle necessary to use in the Trithemian system? No, not at all. There's no salt involved in the Trithemian system. It was just paper and pen, and it can be a finger and a cup of water. It's pretty easy. Let's see. The danger of planetary magic is that you could make too many changes to your life too quickly, and you won't be able to handle it all. But very safe overall. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think Kaigon hit it right on the head there. I don't even think. I don't know. A lot of us that are drawn to magic and the occult have been through some really traumatic experiences, and we're pretty tough when it comes to that kind of thing, and we're kind of used to it. A lot of us are great at managing chaos. So I think when I suggested that people get into this stuff and it creates chaos, you're fine, it's because a lot of us are fine. It's probably not safe for everybody. It's not always going to be enjoyable, and that's part of the ordeals is that you're supposed to go through pain. And that's just my opinion, and it's just my understanding of it after having been through several initiations that were, some were painful, some were just pleasurable, some were pleasurable in ways that hurt later, and some were painful in ways that brought pleasure later, and it is what it is, and it's weird, and it's messed up, in the same way that everything has a good side, a bad side, and a meaningless side. Initiations are weird and they're messed up, but yeah, it's dangerous, but in a good way. You never lose anything that you need. Okay, that I can promise you. I've never lost anything in any initiatory system that I would want to hold on to. Sometimes it hurt to lose things that I was attached to, but the attachment was unhealthy, and that was what was being treated. And that's always good for me, and that's been my experience. So it isn't necessarily safe. It isn't going to be painless, but it's always for the good in my experience. What are ways you suggest in reaching an altered state of consciousness? Meditation for sure is something that I do regularly. I've started doing mantra every day. I say Zeus ho Kephale, Zeus ho Mesos, Zeus ho Ponto Krator. I was saying Zeus to Ponto Krator, but I was corrected by Patrick Dunn. It should be Zeus ho Ponto Krator. If you've taken my courses, I still haven't corrected the documentation, but it's just Zeus the head, Zeus the middle, Zeus the all in all. And you say that over and over again, and you start to realize that everything starts with the head, has a middle, has the all in all. And it applies to so many different aspects of your life. It becomes a way of filtering everything else out. So, and that creates also a change in consciousness that gives your mind the ability to think about different things in different ways, reprograms your neural network, lets you reprocess different things that you've experienced, as just understanding it from source, invisible forces that were at play at the time experience, right? So that helps you process trauma, it helps you put things into place, put things that are going on at work into context, put things that are going on in relationships into context, understanding that there's a source, a middle, and an experience. It just gives you a framework, right? So this trance state that you create then becomes a practical tool. That's why I do it. But any kind of mantra seems to be effective. I've also had great effect lately with the Ganesh Om Gam Ganapate Namaha. That's been fun. A lot of the different Hindu Bij mantras I've been meditating with those, and I love them very much. But I'm not a tantric. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just enjoying the mantras, and enjoying the God feeling that I get when I'm doing it. Like the feeling of the God's presence when I'm chanting the names is beautiful. I love ecstatic mysticism, and it's a lot of fun. So. Let's see. Everyone should take a class in pharmacology. I agree. You should understand how your brain works with chemicals and how chemicals impact you. The idea that we have of ourselves is what conflicts with a lot of our experiences of ourselves, because we think that we are things that we are not, and we don't understand that this flesh suit has as much say on everything we experience and think as what we wish were true about ourselves. Our inner experience of ourselves is not the sole arbitrator of our activities or our thoughts necessarily. And if you don't understand how your brain works, you don't understand what your meat suit is doing. You're flying a mech with no manual, and we've had to figure it out over centuries, but we've been studying it for centuries, millennia. We have good handbooks on what goes on up here and what's going on right now. We know more about our chemical processes than ever before that we can look at. So use it. Use the advantages. AI is a great summarizer of things. It's not 100% accurate, and people are going to get upset about that. I'm sorry, but the things that it's been trained on when it comes to medical information is great if you can find a medically trained unit. But a lot of it is a lot more useful than not having it at all. And use your brain. Don't check your brain at the door, but it's worth pursuing. Agreed. Enduring the ordeals that come with initiations, right? Enduring that is where the initiations come from. Putting a sacrifice in the talisman bag, it depends on what you mean by sacrifice. I put in the butts of cigars that I offered to the gods. So in that way, yes. Like if you smoke a cigar in the honor of Zeus and you put it in a Jupiter spirit bag, then that counts, yeah. If you pour out like wine or a whiskey for your spirits, if you pour it over the herbs or something, and then put those herbs in the thing after they dry, that helps. But you're going to probably get bugs, just so you know. You got to check those every once in a while if you do that kind of thing. Let's see. Okay. Perhaps. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you very much. Going to do a little emergency clinical work to make sure someone's physically alive, safe, not ill is okay. Protection wise, oh yeah, absolutely. Part D, I would go with the Mars talismans. The first of Mars is the one I think that has Medemio and Scuriel and Gary, I can't remember them all off the top of my head. I was just talking to them yesterday, in fact. But they, the Mars talisman, the four spirits on the Mars talisman on the first pinnacle, take that first pinnacle, conjure those four spirits with it, and send them immediately to do protection and guardianship and safety around the person that you're concerned about. If you're protecting them from attacks against them, you can combine that with the sixth of Mars as it's a reversal pentacle, and you can conjure Medemiel and the other three spirits of the first pinnacle, and ask them to direct their forces through the energies or through the seal of the sixth pinnacle to reverse any attacks against your friend and return them to their source, and then just say, for no weapon formed against them shall prosper, and all those rise up against them shall fall. And that's the versicle that's on that pinnacle, and that directs the forces of those four spirits into the manifestation of your words. So that's the quick and easy way. Neka leka hai, neka hai ni ho. Those, such are the words. Let's see. Been learning more tantric stuff on the side these days and love it. Have an amazing right on, very cool. Yeah, it's really on the side, but I don't have any much going on it. I'm going through the Redwood course. Recognize that some of it may be outdated. Is there something I should know going into Redwood course to not learn? No, Julian, you should learn all of it. It's all great stuff. Actually, I wish I had put more into it. I wish I had spent a lot more time and effort on that. But everything that I teach now is built on that. 100%. It's expansion of it. And the people who are still teaching it are the most qualified people to teach it. They've also expanded on it and turned it into their own practices. Sam is one of my favorite people out there doing it, but also James Foster and a couple other people I can't remember off the top of my head. But those are the people that are most active. There's at least one guy that's faking it. I curse that person regularly, and I can't wait to find out the terrible things that happen to them. But such is life, right? You know, part of being part of the all thing is that recognizing that some things are evil, some parts of the all thing are evil, and you have to cut it out. So that's why we have Malefica. Anyway, everybody, I hope you have a great evening. I had a lot of fun with this one. Sorry again about the dog, but it is just part of the life, and she's wonderful, and I don't mind at all, to be honest. I'm sorry for you having to watch me stand up and disappear for a second, but hopefully it wasn't too bad. Anyway, have a great evening. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, I forgot to turn this off.